Waiting for people to join?
That, and I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. So,
Let me know if you need something.
will do. Thank you. Will do. Thank you. One concurrent viewer.
Why? Baby? School is opening 2 hours late. So I go to bed 1 hour later? No. Go to the same time. You want to study for an extra hour? No.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? I see Beth, Ryan. Give me 1 second. I got somebody texting me for the URL, which I'm glad it came in late. Told y'all, first time doing this. First time doing this. Um, I can't see the chat right now, but give me 1 second. Let me send this over. Sent. Boom, 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 boom. Yep, yep. Right here, this one. Forward to. What's going on, Mary? All right. It would be the longest email ever for this person. Give me one moment. Did I type it right? Let me see. All right, all right. Um, let's give a couple minutes for everyone to get a chance to get to the new link. Can you hear me okay? Am I coming through? Hello. Okay. Looks like it should be good. Ryan, Beth, hit me up. All right, cool. Thank you, Beth. All right, cool. All right. Appreciate it, Ryan. All right, so you're not gonna be looking at my face too much longer. Just wanting to get everything rolling. Yes, Mary, I see you in the chat. That's what's up. Um, all right, give me 1 second. I have one more person trying to jump on. Uh, Let me go and text this over to someone because they're having problems with the email. All right, sent. All right, and a reminder, you all have my cell number, so if you want to, so they're in. They get, how do you can't chat? Yeah, Sarah, we're gonna work on that. Let me go ahead and pull this out. Make sure you're in the right one. Copy URL. Anyway, Sarah, try to, I guess, jump out and jump back in. See if that fixed your chat issue, but there should be no restrictions on the chat. I just checked that. All right, do I say Megan or Megan? I know it's you, Sarah. I know it's you. All right, we got one more person jumping on soon. So we're gonna need that story behind the name you posted out there. Um, so you had to talk about that later on. Send me a chat about it. All right. I'm telling you, I am excited about today. I spent some time trying to think what is the best way to start this off. I do want to make sure it's something that we can do together moving forward and making this a consistent, time for us to come together and learn a little more about technology. I'm going to try to expose things I've done completely wrong in life when it comes to technology so that hopefully you all can learn and show you what I did to fix it along the way. A couple stories here and there are going to probably pop up. We'll see what happens. I'm going to try to keep my jokes to a minimum so I don't offend anyone. But for the most part, I hope to have some fun with this. What's going on, Q? Q, I love it. I appreciate you jumping in here. I'm telling you, I'm telling you. All right, so we got one more person, but I think we'll jump right into it. Once again, this is a open forum for everyone to ask questions. I'm checking the chat, which is kind of difficult for me, multitasking and keeping my mind in the same place. But I'll do my best to look at the chat as much as I can. Um, Also, like I said, please ask me any questions you want to. Let's go. Basically, I'll tell you the reason why I wanted to do this is one, it helps me solidify what I've learned over my career and my personal time spent with technology, and also hopefully helps bring some stuff to you all and gets you curious. I think the biggest thing about getting into technology is a healthy curiosity of things and getting over that fear of breaking something because I've pretty much broken most of the things you could think of on a computer, whether it be software or hardware. I've really done some messed up things to computers. In fact, thinking about it, I was thinking the other day, what story can I tell you about something really dumb I've done? If you don't know much about me, I am a very frugal, as some people say it. I say cheap, but I actually had a broken screen on my phone, and let me know how many people have broke their phones before. Throw a one in the chat if you broken your phone, your screen on your phone before. Dropped it, wasn't thinking about it. Let me know. What have you done? Uh, have you had experienced that before? Anybody, help me out. So I'm taking that. I'm the only one that cracks. Oh, there you go. I love it, Q. All right, it came through. Yes, too many, too many. So, Q, I think you're in the boat with me. So, being cheap and frugal like I am, I was like, you know what? I'm a tech guy. I can figure this out. So, I'll go online and I find just one. All right. You're lucky. I've literally have cracked every screen on every phone I've had since like 2017, 2016, and there's been at least three or four of them because of this. But I went online, I found the screen set, I Googled it, I YouTubed it, how to replace a screen, and I'm sitting up here. I was like, yo, it's a Saturday, I got all the stuff I need, and I was like, I'm gonna just pry that mug off, I'm gonna jump into it, and tempered glass screens protector. You know what? You know what, Mary? You're smart. I'm gonna tell you, the best way to go. I don't know what it is. I will do a screen protector, and the very moment I take it off and forget to put it back on because I have like extra ones, that's the same day it drops. Same exact day. It's just my luck, man. It's just my luck. Um, and so I'm sitting there prying the screen. I'm taking the back of the phone off, and it says you have to remove the battery. So the one really dumb thing I found out, lithium batteries are very dangerous. And I did not pay attention to the video I was watching. And instead of using um, a plastic tool, I use a regular metal screwdriver to try to pry the battery out. And the next thing I heard was pop, pop, just sizzling sound, and I see flames pop out of just nowhere. So I arced the battery with a metal screwdriver, and I ended up throwing the phone on the floor and having to cover the phone. I no lie, I got pictures somewhere in my Google Photos. So I've done some stupid stuff with technology, right? That's the point. I've done it all. I've done it all. I promise you. And if I haven't done it, I will end up doing it. Probably somewhere in these sessions that we're doing this together. But anyway, so that being said, I think we got most of the people on. I'm super excited about today. A little bit about me. So, I have been doing, I have been involved in technology and getting my hands deep into it since elementary school. But I built my first computer in 2000, I think 2000 and I want to say 2008 is somewhere in that year. I built my first computer and experienced some things, learned about hardware and stuff like that. And being the frugal individual I am, I found out about Linux. It is a free and open source, and I have to emphasize the "and" part because everything open source is not free. So this one's free and open source, and di- I I just went deep into the world of open source. So I mentioned that because during our sessions, I will do my best to bring open source technology to you. And the reason why I choose open source is because I don't want anyone listening to this to think that one application or one instance of one thing is how it works and that's all you need to learn. I'm focused on teaching and even developing myself the underlying technology, how that technology works completely, right? So that's why I choose to use open source because one, most corporations don't run all open source. They use a lot of commercial stuff because of the support that comes with it and the ease of integration usually. But for me, if I teach you open source, then you get to learn what the underlying technologies are. I'll give you one second. I'm gonna say good night to my son real quick. Good night. You're not gonna. Oh, okay. You don't want people to see you give me a hug, huh? He's a teenager. He gives me a hug normally, so everyone knows that. Good night, son. uh, but anyway, so that being said, we're gonna learn about the open source stuff. Today is strictly about getting you started, ground zero. And the way we're going to do it is through virtualization. So, the agenda for today is to cover virtualization and to give me one second. I got the notes that we put in our stream. So, we're going to cover virtualization. That's going to entail installing. We're going to do a hands-on thing. So, I'm going to take my time. We got plenty of time before it's 9 to install VirtualBox and to install Docker. Those are two virtualization technology we're going to install today. And in the meantime, while we're going through those steps, we're going to talk a little bit about sandboxes. If you never heard of them, we're going to talk about what sandboxes are. We're going to talk about containers. We're going to talk about virtual machines, also known as VMs, as you see in the notes and the agenda. And then along that way, obviously, when it comes to virtualization, we're going to talk about the operating systems. I want you all to be familiar with the options you have out there. In addition to that, I do want to talk about performance stuff, which is where the note from pages and swap files come from, and then also networking. And that's only because I expect, and I would love to see everyone in here, if you have the hardware to do so, run two or three virtualized systems once we're finished, right? Over the next few weeks. I want to see people running more than one. And if you're going to do that, understanding a little bit of networking to start with, and we'll dig really deep into the networking eventually, right? Over as time goes. I'm trying to keep it low key, just relax for everyone. There are no tests, no pop quizzes, besides the bonus time. So at the end of every hour, the first hour is dedicated to whatever we're going to talk about. And at the half an hour after that, we will be doing some CTF, some capture the flags, walking through solutions, thought processes behind that. So that's what I want to make sure that if you're interested in that, please stick around from 9 to 9:30. And if we on weekends that we can pull out longer hours to really dig into them, it's all on you all to vote for that. Okay. All right. That being said, let's get into it. Let me go and get my face off of things, um, and get my desktop up here. All right. So let me get a one in the chat if you can see the desktop. How are we looking on the desktop part here? You see my screen. A little bit of lag here. I need to figure out how to, if there's a latency, way to get this off. Okay. Got you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. All right. I love it. I love it, Ryan. Just got to go ahead and do something different, huh? Can't do that one. Got to put a little extra in there. I appreciate it. Thank you. It's actually a built-in background with the operating system I run. All right. So, VirtualBox. This is where we're going to start. So, for you all, I assume most of you all are running Windows. If you're not running Windows, put in the chat what your home machine is. If you're running Mac, if you're running Linux, I would love to know if anyone's running Linux, um, or if you're running anything other than Windows. I'm assuming it's Windows, and I'm trying to do this so I can show off for whatever for the majority of the group. Okay. All right. Got you. Got you. I got Windows. I got Windows. They coming through. I love. Hey, Ryan, I just saw your message telling me your house is in the distance. I believe you too, man. You know what, Ryan? I like the way you said that. Vintage. Yes, 2011 MacBook Pro is antique, but it still runs, right? Still runs. So, Mary, I'll be honest, I haven't even tried Windows 11 yet. I haven't done it. I know, shame on me. I just haven't upgraded. I haven't actually. Well, the reason why, just to be clear with you, I haven't done Windows 11 because I don't run Windows. So if I put my other screen, you'll see that my setup on my computer is completely different. I actually run Linux Mint, and I've been running Linux Mint for I don't know, close to 10 years now. Um, don't. I'm gonna have to do it now. You say that. I told you I'm all about breaking stuff. I want to figure out what's wrong with things. It's no fun if everything works. All right. So because we got mostly Windows, I went ahead and I actually installed a Windows VirtualBox VM virtual machine. So let me tell you a little bit, right? So like I said, we got to talk about what this is. So if you see on top of my screen, it says VirtualBox. That's what we're working with. Um, this technology is the same thing you're going to be installing. And the reason I started with Windows because I want to walk you through the steps one at a time. If I'm going too fast, put in the chat to slow down for you to backtrack anything like that, okay? So Mary, you just came through saying breaking it would be better. Hey, you know what? I love to hear that. I'm always into trying to break something. I really am. Um, all right, so a little bit of background on virtual machines while this pulls up. So this is my first time running this Windows machine, and it's trying to do all these configurations and all this other stuff. Um, so first of all, when it comes to virtualization, you have three different technologies, and I'm showing hands. Maybe I should put my face in a smaller square. Let me go ahead and modify this just a little bit. You're gonna see me for a second. Let me just shrink me down a little bit. How about that? How about that? That might work. I think that does better. Okay. All right. So there's three virtualization concepts that we come across often, which is sandboxing, containers, and virtual machines. Now, VirtualBox falls within the realm of the virtual machine aspect of things, and that is because VirtualBox is considered a hypervisor. So, has anybody heard the word hypervisor before? Q, Ryan, anybody heard hypervisor? So if you've heard hypervisor, I'm going to tell you there are two types of hypervisors, and it does get confusing for some individuals. But the hypervisor is the base machine or software that actually you spin your virtual machines on top of it. I see it. Yeah, I get you. All right, you get that repeated a lot, right? So, and just to walk through it, so the hypervisor, if you think about it, is the box that everything sits inside of, right? And in the case of hypervisor, you have the hypervisor is a bare metal, which means it is designed to be a computer, a server that has no real functional operating system beyond that which needs to be there to spin up additional virtual machines like what you're looking at here. Now, the other side of that is called a hosted um, hypervisor. Exact same purpose is to spin up machines, but it actually sits on top of a layer. Oh yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Pluralsight FMU, absolutely. So it sits on top of a layer, the OS that you have installed on the bigger box. And it sits on, and then you sit your hosted hypervisor on top of that. So there is a performance drag between the two. Obviously, the bare metal has a better performance because you're not going to the additional layer of the operating system, which is also hogging up some of the hardware. So when I'm talking about hardware, and like I said, this is a real basic class. Um, just to make sure everybody remembers, I'm just sitting up here trying to make sure we go through everything from scratch. Um, but yeah, when I'm talking about hardware, basically what I'm talking about is the hard drive, the CPU, the RAM. These are all things many people have heard of before, but all these affect the way that your virtual machines will run. It also affects on how your host machine, and the host machine in this case we've been talking about is the hypervisor, or the machine that the hypervisor, if hosted, is on, right? That's your host machine. And all your virtual machines are like parasites. They just eat away at all the hardware that your host machine has. So just to give you a ladder up technology that's really important when it comes to performance, let me pull this on the screen, and I'm gonna try to follow this chat too. All right, let me pull this up, see if this works, and we'll zoom in. As soon as oh yeah, Zoom is just a part of the browser. All right, so just talking about hardware real quick, just make a small shift for a moment. It's important to do this because when you're doing virtual machines, you have to be aware as to how much of your RAM or CPU you have available. And I'll show you in two different formats. This is one way to look at it, which is just a diagram of what your hardware is. Another way is I can pull it up on my Linux box, and you kind of see my layout here as well. And I'll point out the differences, or where they where they're aligned in the diagram. Okay. But when it comes to hardware, you have your CPU, which you see the top part here on the image. You have your memory slots, which is your RAM. And then you have other things such as your hard drive, which is down here near the South Bridge part of things. Um, this is what they call a chipset, what you're looking at here. Now, the reason why this is important is because a lot of people think that if you put more RAM into your computer or you put a bigger CPU chip in your computer, that you'll get better performance and even and it'll help improve how your VMs run as well. Um, all that, there's a lot of gray area in there though, okay? So one thing I want you to take away from this is when creating your VMs, it's important to know what your current system is running with your CPUs. And I can show you this on the Windows in just a moment, since you are mostly running Windows. Give me 1 second. And also, you want to look at what your RAM is on your machine as well. Okay, I'm gonna pull this up. Man, I haven't done Windows in so long. Oh my gosh. Um, Give me 1 second. I'll pull this up for y'all. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Task Manager, that's what it was. Okay, so I'll pop over here. So this is my Linux window. This is the diagram we were just talking about. Um, And like I said, this is your chipset, but the CPU is important for most people understanding, and the memory slot is also important for most people understanding as well. But the problem is, if you look at this, these are not touching each other. There is what they call a bus between each of these components, and that chipset directly impacts how much data can pass between your CPU and your RAM. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Even though you increase all the RAM to like maybe double it if you can, if your board allows it, your chipset allows it, or if you change out your CPU. All right, good question, Ryan. What command did I use to see it on Linux? Let me answer that real quick. So this one I'm running right here from my Linux window is, oh, sorry, is htop. So this is a separate package that you would install. It does not come built into Linux. I can show you the one that comes with every Linux, which is top. Uh, as you can tell, it looks different. It has the same information, but it's harder to read and it's not as pretty to look at. So this one, top is built into every Linux system, while htop is a package you have to install separately. And if I remember correctly, you could do htop. Um, oh, yeah, no, I'm not gonna mess with that right now. But anyway, htop is what I'm looking at. Okay. So what you're looking at here for me and my system, I have 8 cores, which means I essentially have 8 different CPUs I can leverage. And it's something you can look at on your machine. Ryan, you running Mac, you would have to run Top should be installed on a Mac. And for Windows, just so you see that, we would look at the Task Manager, Performance. And here in performance, it will lay out your memory. So this case, I have, you can see it. I don't know if I can actually like zoom in any. Let me see. View, refresh, options, minimize. All right, cool, Ryan. Yeah. So like I said, I'll try to give you commands that are in any Linux or Unix-based operating system. So top works for all of them. So CPUs, you can see I'm running what my CPU is. The number of cores I have is just one virtual processors. I only dedicated one when I created this machine, and we'll talk about that when we do it. And then the memory is what I dedicated at 4 GB. And then hard drive, I gave 50 gigabytes of hard drive to this VM. But for you, you're going to see different numbers. You might see 250, you might see a 1 TB if you're using your actual home machine, your host machine. Was everyone able to see what their performance is on their machines? So if you have Windows, all right, cool. All right, so the reason why, like I say, this is important is because you're going to, as we install VirtualBox, you're going to be divvying up your hardware to spin up future virtual machines. Good, everybody's on the same page. So you have to know what your hardware is when you're actually going through the process of creating these virtual machines and or containers, okay? All right, so I think we touched on hypervisor. Like I said, is the actual bigger container. These virtual machines are put in like little boxes, right? They're containers in a sense. All virtual machines are kind of containers. Um, and they're in this bigger box, right? That's the hypervisor itself, whether it be hosted or bare metal. Those are the two options you have when it comes to hypervisors. There is just to mention it, VirtualBox is completely free and open source. That's why we're going to download it. The paid commercial version is the VMware, most popular. They do have a free version as well called VMware Player, but what we learned today is applicable across all of them. We're just going to learn how to set up a machine, what components are important to pay attention to. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and jump back into this. We looked at performance stuff so we get an idea of what we're working with hardware wise. We understand that your hardware, VMs are like parasites. They're using your hardware in your host machine, which is the one that you're spinning everything on. Um, and then I think that's pretty much it. I think we'll jump into actually installing VirtualBox. So let's go and pull this up. So I'm in the browser. Um, I have a habit of going to Google, so I always do that first. Yep, yep, yep. Oh, don't you love having a virtual machine with not a lot of anything in it? Yeah, no, I don't care about that. Don't switch. Okay, so let's go ahead and type in VirtualBox. Download. All right, so what you're looking for here is a virtualbox.org, and we are going to download here. And I always do another tab. If you don't have to, if you don't want to. I found in my history of working with web pages, sometimes that back button is not that friendly. And I hate to lose things, so I always do a separate tab. All right, so the beautiful thing about VirtualBox is it comes ready for any operating system you can think of. So it works for Windows, it works for OS X, which is Mac, it works for Linux, obviously, Solaris. And like I said, we'll talk a little bit about operating systems, right? So everyone's pretty much familiar with Windows, um, and that's what I'm gonna click on today. But you also have the Mac and the Linux, and then Solaris is really interesting. The differences between these. Um, I I might have to send you all like a video in the comments that I watched one time before. It does a great job of explaining this, but I'll try to take a quick stab at it. So the operating systems really branched off of two major systems in the beginning of time, I guess you would say, of computers, where you have the DOS operating system and then the Unix ones. And Windows branched off of the DOS and it's been, spreading under many, many different versions here and there since then. All of the other ones listed in this list branch off of Unix in some shape or fashion, right? And that's why a lot of commands, like I was telling Ryan earlier, will work across the board. So understanding Linux and or Mac, and if you have a Unix system, which Solaris is under the Unix hat, learning any of those actually allows you to be prepared any for the same situations, no matter what system you jump on, excluding Windows. It's the only different party in that I guess context. So that being said, and one thing I was going to tell you, I hang out with a lot of people way smarter than me, which I'm glad. And there was one debate we had where they said, "Hey, what's your favorite operating system?" And I was like, "Linux." And the guy next to me, he was like, "Yeah, that's not an operating system." I'm like, "What are you talking about, dude? I download it every time, like all the time. It is definitely an operating system. I've run stuff on it." He was like, "No, it's a kernel." And I'm like, what are you talking about? So it took me many, many, many years to read enough and to guess fit in this brain I have up here what that meant. And so it's really interesting to find out about Linux and how it came about, and the fact that it's not an actual operating system, it's actually a kernel that sits on top of an operating system developed on Unix, right? So a little fun thing about Linux is not actually an operating system. It is a modular kernel that can be expanded without having to restart the machine at all. Actually, there's been stories where a Linux box has run behind a brick wall for decades and never been touched. Complete remote and everything. So it's kind of interesting. Linux is actually that's why I love to explore Linux. People do all kind of stuff with it, and it's really cool. But anyway, back to what we were doing. So you pick which one best suits your operating system. We're gonna go with Windows, and we're gonna start that download. Now I hope everyone's connection is faster than mine. If it's not, we're gonna have a conversation because I'm using Comcast out in the woods, and it's not that great. All right. So this is gonna download, and almost there. I think it's finished. Nope, pause. All right, now we got it. All right, we're going to open file. Now, I don't know what kind of crazy stuff is going to happen. I'm running a VM and trying to install a VM, a virtual hypervisor, host a hypervisor. Everyone loves to talk about Comcast. I'm not gonna say it too loud. My wife is not too far from me, and she's been begging to change to something else for a long time. Hey, but I'm like, hey, I signed the contract and it works. I don't know if there's anything better. Pretty sure there is based on some of the comments, but it is what it is. I enjoy what I have so far. All right, so I just did open file. Now from open file, I'm just going to go through the setup. I'm not doing anything custom. I don't want anyone to do anything custom unless you just feel real comfortable with going through all these particular configurations. I say don't do it. I don't think it's worth the time. The only thing I would change, and this is totally up to you, if you're the kind of person that has like a external hard drive, or you partition your hard drives on your machine, and you have one with more space than the other, then I would browse and change this location, and that's just to make sure you're stashing stuff that's not really needed by the operating system in a separate place. Because for those of you all that have been around with Windows for a long time, the previous versions of Windows, oh, they do not, even newer versions, any operating system will not have fun, will not be a fun time if it fills up on hard drive. You just won't be able to do anything at all going forward. But that being said, change that only if you have to. Other than that, let's go to next. I leave all that on there. I'm just letting it fill up my entire screen. That's fine. Uh, this is the network interfaces. So one thing about virtual devices, they're going to use, once again, your hardware. And the only way for it to use your hardware is for it to know where those pieces of hardware are. And in this case, it has to install a driver that's going to tell it how to create network interfaces that will actually work with the hardware you have. It also adds in certain options for networking. And just to let you know, we're going to have an OSI model conversation as well to get really deep into interfaces and networking and stuff like that. But that's down the road. But yeah, so it creates all these things and it gives you a couple options we'll talk about in just a moment. So I'm gonna hit yes to install the network interfaces and then hit install. Let it run and do its magic. All right, I'm going to allow the app. One of the security pop-ups come up, and I'm going to go ahead and install this. And honestly, I think Ryan asked earlier, I did not even look at the requirements. Let me see, where's the requirements at? Did anybody look at the requirements before for VirtualBox? All right, cool. I like to hear that. Good. Megan. I gotta say Megan. I don't know if you all know. I love the sketch comedy with Key and Peele, and I love the Megan. I love how they say Megan. Not sure how it made the settings. Hey, does it open up? Does your VirtualBox open up? I guess is a question I have. Online version, the documentation. Let's try this one. End user technical dot source code. Let's see the technical documentation tells requirements. Developments, get started. All right, yo, I'll be honest with you. This is something we had to look at a little later about requirements. My Ubuntu looks weird. Good. That's what I'm talking about. I love it. Y'all are already there. For those who have never done VirtualBox, well, we're going to go ahead and do it. And it's so interesting to me that you all are doing VirtualBox. Like I said, they have the free and open source. Well, it's not. I'm sorry. Let me take that back. They have the free version of VMware's Player that a lot of people from the industry tend to use, and I think it's because they're comfortable with that interface. But like I said, the technology is all the same, so it doesn't matter which one you choose. Small differences, and I think VirtualBox is probably more of a struggle at times to get operational. Which I like. I love to hate myself to use Linux and open source stuff. Let me see. It's also my fake Yelper name, Megan. All right, I'm gonna make sure I call you Megan from now on, just in private, just between us. Um, All right, so like I said, I'm not even going to continue to look for the. I know the requirements in there somewhere, but it shouldn't be too bad for most people. And I think we saw the size of the file, downloads. Let's see how big the file was. I don't think it's too terrible. Yeah, it's not that bad. So that's what about a gig. Let me see, megabytes. Yeah, yeah, megabytes, gigabytes. So it's about 1 gig of download. Message retracted. I'm not going to ask what that message was, but I'm intrigued to know. All right, so we got VirtualBox installed. Oh, sorry, closed out my VM instead of closing out the browser. All right, so we did finish it. So once it's installed, you will have this. This is an awesome thing to see, the application. Now, we're not done though, okay? And the reason why we're not done is because for VirtualBox, like I mentioned before, drivers are a huge thing. VirtualBox being a platform meant to support so many different items, it needs to be able to have packaged drivers for any operating system comes across, right? So what happens is you install the application as a hypervisor. Once you create your virtual machines, it has to then know how to operate the hardware you have for that particular instance of a virtual machine. And you'll notice that what I just downloaded is a all supported platforms. I have the penguin. I want to know what the penguin is. Now I'm interested. What is the penguin? I think we're talking about Linux, but I'm not sure. All right, so all supported platforms is what I downloaded, so it doesn't matter which one you have. The reason why you're not, it doesn't is agnostic to your operating system because you're literally going to install this in to this VirtualBox manager. So how do we do that? First we do is come over to File and then Preferences. Oh, on the manual you got the Penguin. Okay, cool. I'm glad you got the Penguin. And then Extensions. Yes, yes, his name is Tux. Yes, Tux. And they have a video game, Tux. I think on one of the Android versions. Um, but anyway, so we're going to do extension. There's two ways of doing this. This is a long way. I'll be honest, it's very long. But I wanted to show you the proper way, I guess the textbook way of doing it. You do it this way. What I personally do, not gonna lie, I go over here and I just double click that sucker. I just be like, hey, let's see what happens if I double click it. Oh, it pops up a little loading screen. So what is that loading screen going to do? Hey, guess what? It asked if I want to install it. Man, I love it. Just curiosity did not kill this cat. It messed me up a lot, but I learned a lot over time as well. So I just clicked on stuff and you just install it with clicking on it instead of doing the long way. But now you know you can do that. So it installed successfully. I got two of these open. Don't need it. There you go. There you go. I love it. Living on the edge. Yes, Mary. Living on the edge with me. All right. So check this out. We are now have a working hyper hosted hypervisor, Virtualbox manager. That's all you need. We are set up. We're good to go. Okay. Now I do see that we're going to be running probably a little bit behind on time, and that's because I took a little bit to get to this point. But hey, it is what it is. Um, so before we go any further, I could walk you through some of this stuff. To me, it's not that big a deal. It's something we're going to do when we actually install the operating system. What I do want to do is make sure we touch on everything that is in our agenda, though. So this is step one. We're going to install this, right? And this is what we're going to use to install all of our future machines. And like I said, I got some exception going on right now. You feel empowered to break something? Yes. And that's a great thing about it. And you know, funny you mentioned that, right, Ryan, is because breaking something is what sandboxing comes to mind when it comes to breaking something. Sandbox is one of the other technologies that we were going to cover today anyway. So, what is the sandboxing, right? Well, now that you know what a virtual machine looks like. You know what technology is used to create a virtual machine, right? So this is a machine. I'm sorry to confuse anybody or tweak your eyes a little bit by doing that little circle move, but this is a machine within a machine. It is Inception. And yes, Tux is loving the hammer. He building some stuff. Um, but beyond virtual machines, you also have something called sandboxes, and not really beyond, but other than virtual machines, you have something called sandboxes, and you have containers. Now, interesting enough, through all my time, I always heard about sandboxing. The way I heard of sandboxing is, and if anybody knows, throw some stuff in the chat. If you ever heard of a sandbox before? And we're not talking about kids' playground with sand in it. We're talking about a computer sandbox. But anyway, I first came across sandboxing in actually a security context, right? They were like, hey, if you got some bad malicious stuff happening on your machine, you should get a sandbox and make sure. I'm like, what is a sandbox? Then I started realizing, oh, a sandbox really is just sectioning off. And I got a drawing pad, but I don't want to set it up. I'll probably do that next time if we dig any deeper into things. But a sandbox is literally sectioning off your host machine and saying, was Mural a sandbox? Ah, good question. Good questions. Mural is just a web application. Now, Mural could be a container, an app hosted in a container. That could be the case, but it wouldn't make a difference to the end user if that is the case either way. But good question. All right, so the sandbox is a sectioned off part of the host machine, and it isolates. It runs on the host machine, but it isolates everything it can so that whatever you do in the sandbox doesn't affect the whole machine. So it's a way to look at malicious content without exposing the rest of your machine to it. So that's what sandboxes started off as. Linux actually had the first earlier versions of sandboxing, and I just love Linux. I'm gonna tell you about Linux all the time as much as I can. But Sandboxing actually started with things called namespaces, and namespaces literally are just sections or spaces that ha that are that are aligned with particular functionality of a machine, such as they have a networking namespace. So that namespace only works with networking stuff. And that's where sandboxes started, right? They're like, hey, let's section off this part of the machine and say it can only do this part of the network. It can only do networking, or it can only do files local. Then it grew into users. It can manipulate user stuff, right? That's where sandboxing started. And then it actually progressed into what we now call containers. So sandboxes, even though I listed it separately, was the grandparent to what we now call containers, because containers use the exact same technology in Linux to segment off and allow you to spin up applications in a container and also operating systems in a container. So it's kind of interesting. It's a way to segment stuff off. All right. Um, per the internet instructions. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. And sandboxing can be done in anything. The application can build its own sandbox. So if you're in Chrome, I believe Chrome has a sandbox version of it um, that you can use. But yeah, that's interesting. All right. So that's the case. So we got this started up. Um, I do want to at least get started on the Docker. Good point. Absolutely. Java creates its own environment, the JVM, Java, I'm sorry, JRE, Java Runtime Environment. So you ever see JRE, that's what it's talking about. So Java creates its own environment that is isolated from the rest of the system. And that's what makes it what they call portable. So portable just means it will function the same way on one system as the next system. So containers are portable. Java is portable. They're built so that they run the same no matter where they are. So good point, Samuel. Great point to bring that up. All right. So any questions real quick? Because we got a couple minutes. We can go over just a little bit for those who want to stay till 9:30. But any questions on what a container is or what a sandbox is? And we can definitely play around with those once we get a good system running. Okay. All right. So I'll wait for questions to pop up. All right. So the one thing about networking I did want to touch on today is if we go to our VirtualBox and we go to preferences, as you add more boxes, you may want to interact with just those boxes as one network, also known as a software defined network, SDN. That's the same premise here in the world of virtualization. You can program, you can set up your program to acknowledge sections of networks that are virtual to the machine. Okay, so if we go to network here, and you can do plus here. It says NAT network. So NAT is a later conversation we'll have when we get into networking. But basically, all it means is this is a network in itself that will talk to itself. You can have as many machines as your host machine can bear. So if you can do two machines that running one CPU and 2 GB each of RAM and maybe 20 gigabytes of hard drive, then you have a network that you can run and it does not have to interact with the host machine. So that's why I just created with a NAT network. And if I do edit, I can set my IP addressing with this. And I can show you on my host machine how this looks. I do this all the time. So once you enable a network, you set up this, and we'll talk about what the slash 24 means. And I would tell you not to do anything special. Just leave it like this. You can change the name. So, right, maybe home, um, or how about this? uh, Break this network. So it's the break this network name, right? And we do OK. So now it shows renamed. Hit OK. And now under settings, well, we gotta do new. Way to go through the whole seven. We'll get to this later. But once we have a machine on our listing, and I'll show you my host machine as well, so you can see it for yourself. So this is my virtual box on my host machine. Don't worry about the signs; they show up because I have a separate hard drive. But if I go to settings, let's say for my blue box, oh, refresh, and then settings, let's do red box settings. I go to network, you'll see I have multiple adapters, and I have one network set up, but I can add another one and do a NAT network if I have one, which I didn't set up on this machine, but I can do the same preference that I just showed you. So let's add that on this one, and then enable. And breaker 2, port, okay. Settings for the red box again. And now you'll see that I can select a new adapter, NAT network, and breaker 2 shows up. So this is what I'm talking about with networking. This is one thing to pay attention to, not the advanced part. Don't worry about that part. But if you just do this part, you'll work just fine mostly. Okay. All right. So check this out. You got your network part. We discussed that. So now when you get to the point of actually doing, oh, how are you going to do a virtual machine if you don't know how to pull images, right? Let's do this real quick. So I want you to jot this down. This is somewhere, and I can send it to you everyone later. I personally love Linux, and I love this website. You don't have to know every name of Linux. What you do have to do is remember this one website, distrowatch.com. It looks very overwhelming. I understand that. Bear with me just for a moment. Uh, if you come into this website, this web page, you'll see all the new or featured distros, and Linux is called a flavor or a distro. That's what we call them. So these distributions, it will show you like a little screen capture. It'll tell you a description of it. But if you pay attention to the right, it will list every one of the hottest distros out. And what you'll always notice is the one I use, Mint, is always in the top 10. Ubuntu is always in the top 10. Pop OS has been coming up recently, but just have fun with it. I'm telling you, this world of virtualization and Linux is really a place to have fun. Is really go out there and find, hey, what can I do with this version of Linux? I mean, how does that work? And then when you experience Linux and also Windows in a virtual environment, I say, hey, see what you can, and we'll do this together, but see what you can set up to mimic what is happening at work. Because I know most people on the call or in the tech area right now audit, but I hope in the future we get more people in here. But see what's happening in your corporate life and see if you can go back and replicate it at home using the virtual machines, right? And one thing you'll notice is that they have categories of all these, so like beginners, desktop, live, medium is a category. If I click on any of these, like beginners, it will take me to a listing of all of the Linuxes that are considered to be beginners. And beginner Linux usually has a user interface that mimics Windows, so it's an easy transition or step over. Okay. All right. So I know I wanted to get to Docker, but honestly, I think we may need to stop here with the lesson and pick up Docker in the next session. But one thing I did want to mention also is when spinning up a virtual machine, something to keep in mind is that a lot of times you may experience lag if you're not on Windows. And I say not on Windows because Windows, and I don't know how Mac runs. I've never done Mac before, but they do have some. Oh, they do have some called Hackintoshes. If you're interested in trying to get Mac, a Mac distro set up on your VirtualBox. So they have an entire website down dedicated to talking about Hackintosh. So it's something to look at as well. But anyway, so what I was saying was you may experience some lag, right, when you're doing large virtual machines. And the reason why is feeding off of your RAM and also your hard drive. And you wouldn't normally think about hard drive, but this touches on the point that I made in the agenda where we'll talk about swap files and we'll talk about page files. So if you recall the image I had of this image here, where I was talking about the north and south bridge, this is where swap files and page files start to impact your performance with virtual machines because you're sharing your hardware. The virtual machine segments off a portion of the RAM that you have to run that virtual machine and make it available. If your host machine reaches 100% of your RAM usage, there's nothing wrong with that. 100% is never really a bad thing when it comes to computer functioning, unless you don't have a swap drive. You don't have a swap system. And this one I think is best for me to show you for um, my Linux machine. Okay. Um, all right. So actually, you know what? Let me do it through command line. It'd be even better. All right. Turn this off. Um, okay. Yeah. So you see this. Let me clear my screen and view, zoom in a little bit. Okay, so swap files and page files are pretty much the same thing. It used to be page files in Windows. Windows has recently converted over to swap files as well. It's always been a swap file for Linux or Unix-based systems. So basically, what a swap file is a portion of your hard drive. Like I said, this image right here, the hard drive is like the SATA IDE part in the South Bridge. So this is the hard drive connectors, how it communicates. So the hard drive, a portion of the hard drive itself, is actually sectioned off to store all the excess memory usage. So that means your computer multitasks, does multitasking very well, and it will have multiple applications up and running, including the operating system, all in RAM, right? It's running out of RAM, is just being beat up all day, and it can hit 100% very easily. But the problem is when you get to 100% and you decide you want to do a little bit more. Now the computer has to make a decision. What do I do? Uh, do I crash and burn because my memory is completely used at 100% and I have nowhere to go? Or do I leverage what they call a swap file? And with a swap file, it says, hey, I need to use more memory, and I'm not really using these pieces of memory actively. And it makes a decision for you. It'll move things out of your memory into your section swap file on your hard drive, and whatever is most used will stay in your RAM. So it does this transition. Now, what I wanted to point out is if you look here on this diagram, your memory is up here. Where is it connected to? It's connected to your north bridge, but I just told you your hard drive is in your south bridge. So what you start to run issues is that when you have a swap file, it's good because you can use that excess you can use the space currently used and swap it out and to the hard drive and use that for something else that's more important to you. But the problem is that that transition from memory into hard drive is impacted by your chipset as well as how fast your hard drive writes. Yeah, did you get that? Is that clear for you? So if you're moving stuff from your RAM, where everything running is in your RAM, if you're moving through one point here, and you got to go to a whole nother point, so there's two jumps here. There's one to North Bridge, one to South Bridge, and then it goes to your hard drive, which is a third jump actually. That's a lot of jumping, a lot of latency that comes out of that, and that's what ends up happening when it comes to um, swap files and virtual machines as well. So if you experience lag in your virtual machines, it might be because one, you're overburdening your RAM, two, your chipset is really bad and it might be old and out of date, um, or it's just the fact that your hard drive, you're using a swap file and your hard drive has a slow write time. But I will say you will see improvement using a swap file as long as your virtual machine, which you won't know this, but your virtual machine is considered priority. But your RAM, your computer will make that decision for you. I personally have used virtual machines that are really laggy unless I boost my swap file. So that's what I was showing you here. Let me close this. My swap file on this machine, if I do free, and Ryan, you could do this on your Mac. If I do and human readable, so H in Unix always means human readable when you use it as a parameter. So what I did is I added a swap file of 8 gigs because I do a lot of virtualization and I want to make sure that when I'm running one or two boxes that my memory can flow and my chipset's pretty good, it can handle it. It will push things out into my hard drive and then pull back whenever I need it. So that's what a swap file does. Are y'all cool with swap files? That makes sense what a swap does. It just swaps from memory to hard drive and back. So when you're at work and people talking about, oh, you got 100% usage on your RAM, you doing something wrong, it's not good. No, that's not the problem. The problem is, hey, do you have somewhere for the excess memory to go? That's the question you have to ask, right? Do you have a swap or a page file set up for your system? And like I said, Windows uses swap files now, and I have to figure out how to show that to you, but we could do that next time. All right. All right, everybody. Well, that covers pretty much everything except for Docker. I was a little ambitious for the first one, and maybe I did a little bit of rambling. I hope not too bad. Hope some of you all are still awake. But I hope you all gained something out of this for this session. Please, if you got any questions, hit me up. You know, I don't see much in the chat right now. By the way, everyone that did not have virtual machine, at least have it installed with the extension, the all supported extension, as well as your NAT network setup, because that's kind of the key for VirtualBox before you select what distro you want to use. Anyone having problems with it? No? Okay. All right. All right, y'all. So if no other questions, oh, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're going to do. We're going to build as much stuff as we can. So that being brought up, let's go ahead and I'll just show you real quick some of my lesson ideas and breaking stuff. Absolutely. So these are some of my lesson ideas. I'm trying to go, like I said, from ground zero, right? Today was about setting up your environment and getting yourself ready to do some breaking of stuff, as many people say, and also just to be able to apply this to your work environment, right? You people that are in technology, you got to understand what's happening, right? And understanding how the hardware works, how it impacts resources down the line, how the swap file works, how all this stuff works, really helps in understanding what you're looking for. Um, and then, so what I want to do next, computer hardware, we kind of covered today. I don't want to go too deep into it unless you want to, right? Anything on the list, let me know. But the next thing I want to do is cover the OSI networking basics. That's going to be to walk through the layers itself, troubleshooting steps, how we identify what part and what devices are really the issue. Also, want to get into the client server relationship of the internet and cryptography. This is something I spent a lot of my time doing when I did automation building of infrastructure. So it's something I know very well, and I'm hoping to share with you all. I'm going to get you all creating your very first self-signed certificate. I think it's going to be really fun. Uh, and we're going to go step by step, like we did today. We're going to do it all together. If you want to explore afterwards, please do it. Definitely interested in number three. I take number three as the internet, right? The internet, yeah, right. Um, okay. Oh, you know what? Hey, if you all can just give me like 2 more minutes, I wanted to show you one thing because DNS and DHCP is actually something that I know some of you on the call are interested in. And it was really fun when you start understanding how this stuff works, right? So real quick, I just want to show you one thing, just real quick. You give me just like another 5 minutes here. So for every system, including Windows, I could show you the Windows, but I'm just more comfortable with Linux, and I apologize, but it is still there, and I'll show you on Windows. I'll send you the command for that. But every system has a host file, right? And what a host file does is it tells your local system how to resolve uh, names into IP addresses, right? So for instance, if I ping yahoo.com, I think I put www. If I do this, and with Unix systems, you got to do dash C, or it'll go on forever. It'll be a ping of death. So Ryan, if you try this on your Mac, please put a dash C. It doesn't matter what order you do as long as you dash C and a number. If not, it will go on forever. Okay. Windows doesn't do that. Windows has a set number. But if I do ping Yahoo, right, what you'll notice is this IP address, right? So what your host file does, it is the same thing as DNS, except DNS is at the network level when host files are at your local computer level. So your computer is as lazy. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me say it this way: is as efficient as possible. So it always look locally before it goes out somewhere. Everything we do in computers work that way, right? So the really cool part is what happens if I tell it that Yahoo is not at that address? That's the question, right? Can I do that? And I tell you, yes, you can. So the way I do it, and we'll talk about these commands once you get a version of Linux installed, maybe in like two, we'll do it in a couple of sessions later. But so if I open up the wrong file, this host with an S. So if I open up the host file, right? What you'll see here is my local host is defined. Dreamcatcher, um, this is the what is the Dreamcatcher? I think it's the gate. Yeah, it's the gateway. And we'll look at the routes to make sure. But that's not the important part. The important part is this. Like I said, if I tell it, let's say for instance, just real quick, I'm gonna come back to this in just a moment. If I say um, ping www. Now this is my website, and I host it myself on one of my VPSs, which is a virtual private server. So I'm fine to do whatever I do to it. It is mine. Let's say this is an IP address, right? This is to my website. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to open up host, and you do this on Windows, like I said before. Just plop this right into the box. And actually, let me do this. Do make sure. Plop this into the box. And guess what I'm going to tell it? I'm going to now tell it this is yahoo.com. As soon as I spell it correctly, right? Is it really that simple? Yeah, it actually is. Because now look, what happens if I do yahoo.com? Do you notice the difference? It was a 74.16.143.25. Now my machine thinks it is the IP address of 51.79.70.218. This is what we call simplistic poisoning of the DNS, right? This is the same thing you would do for a DNS server. You would corrupt its zone file, and the way it reads is C names and four A's, and we'll go through the list of those later. But how it reads those things will tell it that, hey, we're going to manipulate some of these and say your email server on your internal network is not this IP address. It's actually my email server outside of your network. Those are some things you can do. So if you think this is interesting when you get into DNS, please drop a one in the chat because it's something I'm excited about. And just so you know what it looks like, let me bring up my Firefox. And if I go to www.yahoo.com, guess what it just did? Yahoo.com went over to lcdbookings.com, right? Now, what would happen if I changed my server to read yahoo.com? You would never know the difference. Now, the only thing um, that would happen originally some things is if you use Chrome. So Chrome, if you're not in private mode, actually has its own certificates that it checks against, and it'll look for my certificate on my server to see if it matches the public certificate of public key of the Yahoo server. So it does like a double check. Firefox does it as well, but you could bypass it with Firefox. Now, in private mode, no matter which one you're using, you could bypass. So if you're in private mode for Chrome or private mode for Firefox or any of the browsers, it doesn't do that secondary check. It'll let you bypass it. So imagine if you're not paying attention and you click on it. oh, you're going to be in a very bad place. Even if you're trying to be protected with private mode, it's even more likely you end up on a malicious server if you don't pay attention to those certificates you're accepting. Because you think you're in one place and you're not there. So this is kind of stuff I want to get into with you. But before we get there, you really have to have an understanding of the OSI, and really this part, certificates, right? Because I just mentioned certificates like twice. Um, and then we dig into the DMA. What is the purpose of changing it for yourself? This can be exploited by a bad actor on someone else's computer. Yeah. What's the purpose of doing it for yourself? You wouldn't do this for yourself. This was an example you would do in a larger network. Like when you gain access, and we'll play around with that too. When you gain access to someone else's network, you can poison their DNS. So you can do what I just did, but at a bigger scale, right? And I'm pretty sure you might have typed this a little early, but I just wanted to make sure I read the question out there. Um, and then yeah, you would point it back to a server you own, like I just showed. So exact same demo works whether it be your local computer yourself, or if you're at work and you decide to update the DNS zone files. All right, good, Mary, good. All right, well, hey, I appreciate this. If you want to stick around, like I said, these are kind of the lessons we're going to come into: firewalls, setting up a WAF, IDS, IPS. If you have any other questions, and I'm saying we're going to set it up from ground up, we're going to do our own DNS server. You have any other things you want to do, shoot me an email. You all have it. Um, and yeah, we'll cover that. Or just drop it in the chat. I'm happy to look at the chat as well, the comments. So. But yeah, that's it for this session. We went way over. We're like 15, yeah, 18 minutes over. But to those who are interested in CTFs, you stick around just for a little bit longer. I want to get you at least on a website that will help you set yourself up to do CTFs. So CTFs, for those who are sticking around, are the capture the flag events. So these are puzzles. These are virtual compromises that have been created, and your job is to try to get, yeah, same time, same place next week. We're going to finish Docker, and then we'll actually install a VM, hopefully. All right. All right, sounds good. The two hypervisors hosted is the one that we did today, and then bare metal. Those are the two kinds you have out there. All right. All right. So yeah, CTFs. So they're challenges, and um, appreciate it. The syllabus is exciting, I hope. So the two challenges, they're challenges that are set up and see if you can sometimes evade things, sometimes break things, all to retrieve a flag. So what I'm gonna do is bring up my other virtual machine. I'm gonna power this one off, and I will bring up my red box. So my red box is the one I run for all my penetration testing. So what do I run for penetration testing? I run what they call Parrot OS. No problem, Beth. So Parrot OS is actually a very popular brand distro of Linux that is comparable to Kali Linux, which is probably the most well-known version of a pen testing distro. They do also have Backbox, which is built on a different base of Linux, and Linux has different bases. So Debian, Red Hat, then some one-offs like FreeBSD. Well, that's a base. One-off something like Gentoo, I think. I can't remember. I think Gentoo is one, and some is evading my brain right now. The other one I can think of, but those are base, right? So every one of the distros after that, you'll notice, um, we'll say is built off of one of those bases. So I'm waiting for this to load up. So it's logging in now. Well, it's loading up now, so I can log in. All right, so, and just for show of hands here, put a one in the chat if you're sticking around. I just want to know who I still have. Says I got 5 concurrent viewers. I still got some people on here. They just haven't left, maybe. I don't know. All right, we're gonna do it for those five. We're gonna keep going for those five. All right, so um, distro. Q, Mary, I love it. All right, I appreciate it. So, like I said, let's go to find. All right, Beth, I appreciate it. Ryan, I'm glad you're still here. Distro watch. Let's go back over here just for a moment. 'Cause I want you all. I see you, Sarah, Megan. Let's go back over here just for a moment. I'm gonna pull up Kali Linux, just so you see all the distros you can have. Kim sticking around, I like it. Let's go and get into some breaking stuff, okay? Um, so the category security is probably what I would see most of these under. But Kali Linux, if we go here, you can download the most recent version. And actually, I want to do it through Kali's website. So I'm going to click on kali.org at the very right here. Okay. It's a pretty beautiful website. They really keep their stuff up to date. The people that make Kali also make the best known certifications. So download your version of Kali, and you'll have to do that, get that going. And you're going to walk through installing on a virtual machine. So for those of you who have done it before, please just make sure you run through and do the new. I'm going to walk through it real quick. This is going to be really fast. And I'm not downloading because I have a lot of versions of Kali. Um, I'm going to pick Linux. This is what I'm going to select for Kali. Okay. I'm then going to select Ubuntu because Linux, I'm sorry, this is actually a spin-off of Ubuntu, 64-bit for Kali. And you can do as little as 1 gig. I usually do 2 gigs. And then the virtual disk now. So you're going to create one now. And then you're going to do the VirtualBox disk image. And then dynamic. Now, the difference between dynamic and fixed is dynamic will only take up as much space as the virtual machine needs on your hard drive up until the limit you pick. The fixed will allocate that space immediately from your hard drive to this virtual machine, whether you use it or not. There is a performance benefit of fixed, but because we're doing this in our spare time, we're not in a professional environment. I say use dynamic just to save the space you do have. So a little of 10 gigs, and it does these recommendations based off of what you select as the category of operating system or kernel. We know it's not operating system, right? So it does it based off of that. But always do at least 20 gigs, maybe 20, 40. Doesn't make a difference if you have room to spare, right? So I do create, and there's no harm, no foul yet. Okay. Now, I'm not going to run this and well, I could. I have enough space to do it. So if I go over and do settings for this box and do storage, you'll see where it has an IDE and it has an empty CD-ROM. You're just going to click on that and then click over here on the drop down and you're going to install, choose a disk file, and then it's going to bring up the one you downloaded, right? So I use Parrot Os. But you just downloaded one of the Kalis, right? Like I said, I've been doing Kali for a long time. I have all the different versions, so I'll pick any of these, okay? And you can pick any version you want to. They're pretty much all the same as long as you get the primary one. And that's a good point. I apologize. Let me show you what the download looks like. If you, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I threw you all into the woods like that. They changed so many of, but go to virtual machines, 64-bit, and then download Virtualbox. I apologize. Haven't done this so long. I didn't know they had changed the interface and made it that complicated. But yeah, it said download, and it'll download the new version. And then once you download it, like I said, you'll be in this part of it. You'll select the ISO file, the little disk that you want. You'll hit open, and it'll show populated right here. Then you hit OK, and from there you hit start, and it'll go through the whole loading up thing, right? Now, what I want to do is just to show you this, and we'll do this again later. But I want to show you the steps of setting up your box on the website you're going to go to. So once you have Kali installed, every version, every penetration testing version of Linux I've been in, it uses Firefox by default, and you don't have um, some of my alerts popped up. You don't have Chrome or any other browser available. All right, so and you can tell I do a lot of CTFs here. Okay, malware. All right, so this is the website I want you to actually visit when you're setting up your penetration box. And I want you to walk through and step through all of this. So what you'll notice, and I actually meant to be here. I'm sorry, this is the one, right? What you'll notice is that you have the technical blogs, the analysis, stuff like that. Um, this one, I want you to go to training exercises. No, sorry, tutorials. Click here for tutorials. And this will walk you through setting up Wireshark. Now, Wireshark is a network protocol analyzer. Basically, it allows you to view whatever traffic is going across that interface, and I'll show you what that looks like right now. So this is what you're going to be working with. And the first thing I want you to set up is this because a lot of our CTFs are going to have some level of network analysis that we'll have to work through. And Wireshark, if you try to run this as a normal user, I'm under now as tester, it'll pop up, right? You can also do sudo. Um, so now this would you run into if you don't do sudo, okay? And then what you could do, it walks you through what to do. If you install Wireshark packages, try running these. Okay, so like yes, in response to the question, should non-super user have that? So this is what you have to actually end up doing. Or you can add yourself to the Wireshark group. So we can do this part, just copy and paste. Okay, hit OK to drop that out, and we can close this window, and then we're going to just paste what we just did right here into the, and of course, I didn't copy and paste properly. Let me go back. I know the steps. I just want to make sure we're doing it together. So as a user mod, and I'll just do it while I'll open another browser, another terminal window. And I'm checking the chat out. If you have any questions of what I'm doing, just please ask me. So for those of you all who have experienced the sudoers file, you're familiar with sudoers, and sudo is a command that allows, excuse me, my alarm's going off. Sudoers allows you to execute commands leveraging the root privileges. And root is a super user in Unix-like operating systems, including Linux and Mac and stuff like that. So user mod, and then we're going to add a group. You could do it without the dash, or you could do the dash. Doesn't make a difference as long as you put a space between them. Wireshark is where we're going to add this to, and then the name is tester, and the name is right here. That's who you're logged in as. Okay. I'll show you another way of doing it as well to know who you are. But we'll do our password for the user rights. And of course, it says Wireshark does not exist. So that means I have to create a Wireshark group. All right. So we'll do that in a different when we start getting into this. So I'm just going to run Wireshark as root. But we'll get into adding Wireshark later. So now if I do the same thing, you'll start to see I'm capturing data going through. It's a little delayed, but it picks up. So all the network stuff that's happening, if I go over here and refresh, it will show up here as well. So it shows at the very top. All right, so this is what we're setting up. My colleague is still downloading. I got lost after Wireshark. Hey, look, hey, look. I know it's a lot. I'm gonna send you the link to this stuff. Once you get, and we'll go over it again, right? This is not the last session. We'll touch on it again. I just want to show you what you're going to use to set up your stuff. Um, so first things first, you want to come to this website, and let me just paste it into the chat. I should be able to paste across. It is 4 gigs. It is 4 gigs. It is going to take a little bit of time, and you're not behind. Don't worry about it. This is not a rat. This is not a race. We are doing this together. Okay. And I apologize. I'm sitting up here telling you all this other stuff about Wireshark and users and stuff. I'm just letting you know what you're going to run into. So the way I got around that pop-up box, if you notice this, I use sudo Wireshark, and that runs it as root, which is not safe, but just for the demo we're doing now, it works. Or in your personal home lab, not much to worry about. You could do sudo. But if you run this on an actual server, and you wanted this to be available for other people, then you will obviously want to set up Wireshark, and we'll still do it, but you want to do that before you go any further. So when you walk through the tutorials I just pinged in the chat, uh, you'll end up going through like changing your column display, right? This guy does a great job. He has a great blog in anything related to digital forensics, um, network traffic, and he does articles, white papers for Palo Alto, all of them. All right, so this walks you through how to do it. It has images, really simple to follow. Next, what I want you to do is, once you do these tutorials, come over here and do login. Create an account, register a new account if you don't have one, and Cyber Talents is in the chat. We already put it in there. And then practice. So now you have the listing of it. All right. So everyone, these are the two things I want you to work on for next time we get together. I am a little bit over on time, and I got to run take care of some daddy duties. But yeah, it was fun. Please leave a chat. Contact me on my email. You have it, my phone number, and if anyone popped in on this, hey, let me know if you are interested in joining the group. So thanks for your time, and I hope you learned something today. We'll do some more in the future. Thanks. Bye, y'all.